Right. Okay. Okay, so it is summer, woohoo! And you can get hold of us in the usual ways via our website, our email, hello@bathaastronomers.org.uk, and you can also get hold of us on Facebook or Twitter. You can contribute to those channels as well. So if you want to sort of weigh in on the Facebook groups or want to start a conversation on Twitter, no doubt we'll be very much willing to join in. For those that are new, we get together on the last Wednesday of each month, September to June, which means tonight is the last of our season. This is it. July and August are all up to you, and then we'll be back in September. And the reason is so you can enjoy your summer, but also because darkness is only just coming back in July. We're all in twilight at the moment. It gives people a bit of a rest, and you can focus on other things. So when I last had this slide up, we had a current membership of 49. Our membership is 55 now. So we've not been doing too badly in the last month or so. But in terms of challenge, it means we've got to keep coming up with things to do, ways to keep people engaged. But I'm sure we will be able to keep you all involved. Now, the people trying to make sure that everything's sort of running like clockwork is our coordinating team. And that's, you've got Abby, Chris, who one day will give me a new photo, Jonathan. We've got Mike. Mike's not with us tonight because he's in Barbados. He did manage to come on earlier just to say hello, but he has contributed tonight. He's actually given us a little video for us to play. So looking forward to that. And you've also got myself as well. Now, you don't want to hear too much of me. So we've actually got talks by yourselves, by members tonight, just whatever they want to talk about within the astronomy theme. And it's just sort of get a flavour of what people have been up to and perhaps what you might want to get up to next year. And if you did, who might be able to help you with that, who to go to for advice. So it's kind of like, in a way, a dating agency for amateur astronomers. So look at like tonight, like that, and also hopefully enjoy sort of some of the information, some of the experiences that people have had, both good and bad. So our playlist for tonight, we're going to kick off with Charles telling us all about his sort of life in astronomy. We've got Jonathan who's going to talk about his astronomical adventures. Mike sent us a little video that I'll be playing, which is essentially what he's been tinkering with over the last year. Richard's giving us a talk on, now apologies if I say this wrong, is it Janta Mantar? Hopefully I've said that right.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
A visit that he did. And Rob's going to be talking about rekindling his love of astronomy and astrophotography. Roger, of course, amazing photos he's been taking. He's been doing more this year, so he's getting the latest updates from what Roger's been up to and the stuff that he's proud of and the stuff that perhaps he's learnt this year. And Sandy's going to take us a guide for sort of taking up astrophotography, so that should be fun. And Tony's just going to take us through his sort of view on things, his sort of interest, and sort of the pros and the cons and what problems he's had moving things forward in terms of the hobby and and sharing. Right, so you didn't want to hear too much of me, so I'd like to hand over to Charles first. Now, I've actually enabled sharing for everyone, so you should be able to immediately do a screen share, Charles.
Okay, let's have a go at that.
And then I'll hand over to you.
Hang on. Let's go to there and to
now
there.
people are going to have about maybe 5 to 10 minutes each. If people go over, it doesn't matter too much. I'm sure we'll manage on time. If someone starts doing a War and Peace, and I think the only person, and we've been pre-warned about Jonathan, he can talk forever, but he's very good at it.
Okay, have you got my screen?
I haven't seen it yet, Charles. We haven't seen your screen share come up yet.
Right. Okay, in that case, I'll have to come back.
You should have a green button with screen share at the bottom.
I did, and I did press that, but that didn't seem to work. So let me just go back and
let's try it again.
Back screen share. Right, share screen. I press that.
select the screen that you're going to share, hopefully your PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we all go, yay. Hey, it's coming now. That's
Does that
it.
work?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's working.
Yeah.
Okay. So should I go?
Yep. Yep. You can hit the little project window. So
Okay, that's it.
that's it. That's it. Fine.
All there. Okay, and I shall press my timer. I have 10 minutes, so off we go. 55 years of observing sounds a long time, doesn't it? This is my first telescope in 1964. It's made by Charles Frank of Glasgow, 4-inch Newtonian, cardboard tube, basic construction. I can still smell the glue. You can see little dowel there. And of course, you know, it's a telescope. I was 13 at the time. You can see the phases of the moon. You can see the moons of Jupiter, Saturn. So it's something. Still in the States, this is the Maria Mitchell Observatory at Nantucket, where we went for our vacations in the mid-60s. And that was founded by a famous female American astronomer. But what happened when I was there was there were summer courses run by Dr. Dorrit Hoffleit, who was one of the original Harvard calculators. And she had gaggles of many female students who would come and do public observing sessions in summer and photography at nighttime. I went along to one of these things and was a keen young kid. So they said, why not come along and do some of the imaging at night? And I pitched up that evening and found it's actually Dr. Hoffleit herself in charge, not these young graduate students. She thought that her graduate students having this young man overnight was not a good idea. So, but I had my evening with her, and this is the telescope that they had. It's an 8-inch refractor made by Clark. And I did some guiding. And they have a quite well-known collection of glass plates of much of the sky. And one of them probably has some rather wobbly star trails on. That's the one I did. So coming back to the UK, I eventually got my own telescope. And this is not my telescope, but it was an 8-inch made by Fulloscopes. And you can see lots of sort of familiar Fulloscopes brands with their German equatorial mounts and these little legs and this amazingly high-tech door, near the base of it. And it's actually a pretty good telescope. It did me very well for many years. Then I did what students always do, and was on my way down, age about 19, to Cornwall to visit a girlfriend. I was driving down the M4 overnight, crazy idea, in August, and I just saw a strange purple glow in the northern sky. So I thought, what the hell's that? Came off the M4 at exit 14 and realized it was actually the Aurora Borealis. So I got out my trusty Zenit B camera and just balanced it on the car roof and took some pictures, this is one of the best ones. So never say that I don't do imaging. Much later on now, this takes back to 94. Some of you are old enough to remember that Comet Sugar Magalevi was broken up by Jupiter, and then it was predicted it would actually whack into the giant planet a little while later. And this is something much anticipated. And I remember looking at it, observing the day after, in fact, because the comet actually hit the back of Jupiter as we see it. But I do strongly recall that when you could see the front view, there were very obvious brown blobs on the surface, and that was quite a thing for an ordinary amateur telescope to actually see this amazing effect. So later on, of course, in the 90s, we also had two spectacular comets, Hyakutake in 96 and then Hale-Bopp in 97. Both of them really bright, both of them comets of a century, both visible in the middle of Bath in nighttime, and they really helped to sort of stir one's interest. So I got a better telescope. This is my Meade 8-inch SCT. Nothing nasty electronic about it, little drive, but then otherwise that was all. I still have it, by the way. So if any of you have a good use for an 8-inch SCT, and let me know. And I became an eclipse chaser. This is me on a trip to China in 2009. See the eclipse there. What you can see there is a nice grey sky that you had. The only good news about it was, and when I was lucky, is that I entered a competition with Explore while I was there to actually win a free trip. And I actually I did win, so I didn't pay for this trip. So I didn't pay to go to China and not see the eclipse. So that seems reasonable. Good. And then I left the MOD that year, so it gave me more time. I met Dick Phillips, who some of you will know, and helped him revive Bath Astronomers. And I took a fatal step while observing night, observing with Dick Phillips. And that is, I saw this, the Veil Nebula. Once you've seen the Veil Nebula down a decent-sized dob, you're hooked, basically. And Dick had his 12-inch Orion dob, and I saw this, and I thought, my goodness me, I have to do this. So I got one too. I got a Lightbridge instead. Here it is. And it served me pretty well for many years. And particular things that I really enjoyed looking at were the M82 supernova, the UCL guys discovered by pure chance when they were just testing out a new camera. And you could see it for several months. And seeing this very, very iconic galaxy side on, but seeing the supernova whack on it was really quite something. I mean, how many people have looked directly at supernova? Not many of us, I think. So that was good fun. And of course, we all know, as a fuzzy collector, playing games in the Virgo Galaxy class is just wonderful. This is the Macari and chains, I'm sure you realize. And with a 12-inch job, on a decent night in White Sheet Hill, you can just see hundreds and hundreds of galaxies. And of course, you can see globular clusters, which are another favorite thing. And of all the various things that I show people in telescope, who are not so familiar with it, globular clusters are often one of the best, I think, because if it's bright enough field and a 12-inch job will do this, they really are pretty spectacular. So I had tried going up one size. I went down to Eddington Lodge with my dear wife back in 2013 and tried their 20-inch jobs. And they were okay, but only okay. And I had to say, we had a reasonable night there. And it's reasonably dark skies. And I thought, okay, the 20-inch sees a bit more than the on the 12-inch, but no, it wasn't spectacular. So that has led me to limit my aperture fever. I know that the 12 inches is good enough for me. Still eclipse chasing, so I went with a couple of friends to Oregon in 2017 to see the eclipse there on a bit of eastern Oregon. Pretty dry there. And people were being very commercial, so you could rent a small space in this bit of Nowheresville, Oregon, on the key day for $50 per day, and many did, and it was really quite an event, and quite spectacular. One thing I like doing is seeing what else you can see when the sun's in total eclipse. This is my picture, but the sun was in Leo, and I do remember seeing Regulus, so. It's quite fun to see Regulus sort of by daytime. There wasn't smoke in the sky, so you couldn't see much else more broadly, but seeing that was good. And also an American trip, I've been to Flagstaff and looked at the famous 24-inch refractor there, used by Percival Lowell to invent canals on Mars. And they had observing nights this thing. So I actually looked through this thing and had a pretty good view of Jupiter. Lots of quite interesting detail of cloud belts and so on. So that was quite good fun. And on the same trip, we went down to the Green Witch House, which some of you may know about. It's actually run by a Brit, owns the house. He's got some nice telescopes inside the house, a 12-inch job, for example, the man's perfect telescope. And so we had that for 2 nights. Trouble is, the weather, as you can probably see a bit from these clouds, was fairly disturbed, and we had 2 nights of cloud and rain. So I was there in one of the best dark sky places in the USA, and I had 2 nights of cloud and rain. I think Simon probably advised me which days to choose to stay there. But look at this. Here's the house. The observatory is just here, and it's actually now occupied by raccoons. So it's a raccoon house now. And where you do the observing is a little box. And you can see how it has very high walls because your chief danger there is snakes. So that's something to attract you to observing the States. So this is now me. I'm not quite sure I'm looking grumpy, but that's my current Orion telescope. It's an F4 or an F5. It's pretty good optics, but I haven't had that many nights of observing with it. And here's my new toy, my Helios Lightbridge 25 by 100s. with a polar mount, also from Orion. And it's quite a nice bit of kit, but hasn't had much chance to be observed yet. So if you come observing sometime in Wellow, I hope we'll be able to show you things in it. And that's what we all want to do. And here we have me with my dob, and that's somebody a decent distance in the background. And the Flying Dutchman is about to go. So that's my 10 minutes. There.
Well, that's spot on. Well done. I think that might be Chris Brooks in the background. I'm not sure.
Is it Chris? I thought it was you, Simon, actually.
Oh, because I would have been
It might
taking the
be,
photo.
yeah.
It's someone being active in the background. So that, I'm trying to remember that evening, but it might have been Chris.
Might be me.
It is.
Yeah.
It's you in the
Chris. No, Chris. Yeah. That's me. That's me in my light bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it might be. I can't remember.
that's me.
Thank you very much, Charles.
You're very welcome.
Whilst we hand over to Jonathan, did anyone want to ask Charles anything about his adventures over 55 years? No, no.
Stunning. That's fine. It's okay. I can go.
Well, all I can say is thank you. Back in, was it 2009, with Dick Phillips of sort of birthing Bath Astronomers and bringing it back from the other side, as it were.
Yeah. We made a start. You've done a far better continuation, Simon, apart from your this clear sky prediction.
It might have, Charles, it might have been your telescope I looked through. It was probably like 5-6 years ago now when there was a Star Watch
It might have
down.
been.
And I went down, but I didn't take my telescope with me. I think yours. It was really, really good.
Good.
I was pointing out where Neptune was or something, and you were finding it because I had the Go Sky Watch app on my phone at the time.
Okay.
And I think I was just telling you roughly where it was, and you were finding it.
Okay. Neptune's tricky, actually. I find with just the Dob. Uranus isn't too bad, but
I think you found Uranus by yourself, and then I told you that Neptune was just to the sort of right of it or something.
That's probably right, actually. But Neptune is tricky. It's getting easier because it's going to Pisces. So it'll be easier to find guide stars to find your way there. But so.
Are you still planning on doing the eclipse hunting? Because I think there's going to be one in Spain in a not too distant future as well.
Not a total, is there? The next one I'm aware of is in Texas in about 3 years' time.
Is it in Texas, is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was in Spain in
I
a
wasn't
few years.
aware of one in Spain. Maybe you're right. I'll check. But certainly, eclipse trip's a lot of fun. And I mean, have you seen a total eclipse?
Well, I was down in Cornwall for that doomed 1999. It was just, but it was like your China trip. I sat there and cried, basically.
Yes. Well, I've tried 3 and I got 2, and actually seeing a total eclipse of the sun in a clear sky is one of those actually mind-boggling experiences. It isn't a rational thing. I know it's happening. I can describe it. But actually seeing it happen is one of those things that makes you, shiver. It really is.
Yeah.
So do keep trying, and do see one. My wife says she'd never heard me so excited.
I can believe it. It's one of the things.
Saw the 99 one, but we weren't in the UK. We were in France at the time. So keep trying is my recommendation.
I will.
Okay. Thank you for that, Charles. I think the Spain one's in 2026.
Right. Okay. I knew it was in a few years. Yeah.
So over to you. Oh, sorry.
I'll start saving up.
So over to you, Jonathan. Take us through your astronomical adventures.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
That's fine, that's good. Well, it's sort of vaguely similar to Charles, but less observing. So I think like most young children, we're all hopefully fascinated by the stars and the heavens and the skies above us, and I certainly was. And I think probably one of the main things that triggered it off for me personally was watching the moon landings on a great big old black and white television in our school hall, or at least the highlights of it or the repeat of it or whatever it was. So I'm old enough to remember that. at least. So that was a big factor in inspiring me to take an interest in this rather fascinating hobby of ours. And like most of us, I suspect, good old Patrick was the other key interest for me, particularly his books, I have to say, which rather stupidly I seem to have got rid of most at a boot fair many years ago, and I wish I hadn't now, of course. But I've been searching on eBay probably to find some of the original hardbacks again. So, yes, in fact, one of my school prizes, I think they gave me one of his 1978 yearbook of astronomy, I think. So yeah, good old Patrick there. And of course, not only was the factual side of it extremely important to me, but science fiction as well. And Isaac Asimov and H.G. Wells. I think I did an H.G. Wells book as part of my O-level, I think I seem to remember. So this wasn't a regular pastime of mine, but occasional dressing up as an alien seemed to fit the requirements for children's parties. It's not something I still do these days, I have to haste to add. Like Charles, I've had a number of telescopes, but in fact the one that's really interesting is the one that's on my homemade Meccano mount, which is almost hidden behind me there against the window. Because that's the first refractor that my mum ever bought me from a jumble sale. And that's the one that I was using, like Charles was saying, to observe the moons of Jupiter and the craters on the moon and learn how to do solar projection. And then my first scope, similar to Charles, not quite as big, not quite as grand, but it was the 6-inch or 6.25-inch Newtonian from good old Fulloscopes in Farringdon Road in London, which again, rather stupidly, I don't have anymore, rather sadly. But I still use, as Simon will vouch, actually, I still use my grandfather's binoculars and Velbond tripod for projecting sunspots. So that one's still going strong, at least. One of the first societies I joined was the Junior Astronomical Society, now known as the Society for Popular Astronomy. And the reason I'm holding it there, the edition was Hermes, was because, oh, there we are. That's a early publicity shot. The reason I'm holding it was in 1978, I went to my first international astronomical youth camp, which was in a wonderful place in Havelte in the north of Holland. I am in there somewhere, but I can't find myself. Never mind. I'm in there somewhere. Great thing to do. If you've got children, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, next door neighbors who are sort of 16, 17, 18-year-olds, it's still going strong and highly recommend it. I went on a rival camp in 1979 in Wielau in Germany, where there was an observatory there. The International Workshop for Amateur Astronomers, I think that one was called. And because I'd made so many friends from the Dutch camp, I went back to Havelte in Holland in 1980. We're looking a bit more civilized, I think, in that one. But it's still going strong. In fact, they had a camp in this country 2-3 years ago. Sadly, I had planned to be able to go down, but I wasn't able to go and join them. But and then the scary one was, and that's my brief pipe smoking phase, was I went in 1981 to the 5th General Assembly of the International Union of Amateur Astronomers in Brussels. There you go. So really high flying at that time. I've no idea whether the IUAA is still going or whether it's under another version now, but that was probably the peak of my international astronomical travels at that time. And like the the lady there was saying earlier, I too was sat, that's actually my wife at the time, I was sat there in a tent in a National Trust field in Cornwall in 1999 for the total eclipse of the sun, which I didn't see, but we saw various phases afterwards. In fact, we watched it on the neighbour's television, which he very kindly had shared with everyone in his caravan, I think it was. and you probably can't quite read it, but the best thing I ever photographed was the sign in the Royal British Legion Club window, which said, due to bad weather, the eclipse has been cancelled until Wednesday, the 18th of August, which of course was the following day. So I thought that was quite amusing at the time. But as Simon and Charles and anyone who's been associated with either the Herschel Society or what was the William Herschel Museum, now of course the Herschel Museum of Astronomy, will know is ever since about 2000, 2001, that's where I've basically been hiding. And if you read the current newsletter, very, very occasionally I scare people by appearing in full Georgian costume, attempting to mimic William Herschel. I don't give violin lessons, but it made a good photo opportunity. There was the Star Watching Live, I think, that the BBC were doing a few years ago, and I made a few appearances at Laycock with some friends of mine. And we've been doing various outreach activities, as you know, at the Herschel Museum. This was the more recent summer solstice from 2 years ago, I think. The other main advantage of being associated and working and volunteering there is you get to meet some wonderful people. And finally, in 2008, I was lucky enough to get invited down. Literally picked the phone up and he said, come for lunch. So I did. And I was very fortunate enough to meet Patrick. And prior to getting involved with Bath Astronomers, I spent a bit of time lurking around Wiltshire, and Andy Burns and others were quite active before the Bath Astronomers really kicked off in recent years. So they did a lot to help us out at the museum, including solstice observing. And I also appeared in an episode of The Sky at Night in 2011. I think it's Paul Abel, isn't it? Sadly, I don't have a photograph of me because, of course, it's on film. And I couldn't have photographed myself being filmed at the time. But I think it was called The Gas Giants, if you ever look it up. But I made a star appearance in that in 2011. And of course, now, sadly, after the demise of Patrick, we're very fortunate enough to have Brian as the current patron. And on extremely rare occasions, usually when he's got a book to launch, he will pop his head into the museum. And I was lucky enough to see him in 2014. And now, of course, as Simon said in the introduction, I'm afraid you're stuck with me at the moment on the Bath Astronomers Committee. So there you go. That's a whirlwind tour of my astronomical adventures for you.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Did I see a moustache in some of those photos?
Oh, yes, I think you did. In addition to the former pipe smoking, I think I did sport a moustache at one point. Which sadly I've had to sacrifice for my current partner.
So you also keep yourself busy as a registrar, is that right? Or a
Yes.
registrant?
Yeah. Yeah, so a bit like Charles, I hid in the Ministry of Defence for 23 years, and then I managed to climb over the fence and escape at Ensley again, that was about 2000, 2001. And since then, yes, I've been registering lots of births and deaths, but I've kind of stopped that now. I'm just doing weddings, civil partnerships, and same-sex marriages. So all that sort of stuff now. So keep me busy.
Yeah, but no astro-themed ones yet.
No, couple of bikers one and a couple of Georgian costume ones, but we haven't had an astronomy themed one. But there's always a first.
Did you have to dress up for the Georgian one?
I personally didn't, but some of my colleagues did.
Any thoughts, any questions about Jonathan's whirlwind life with astronomy?
What was frightening was that the picture that he had of himself dressed up as an alien took me back to a very similar costume that I wore as a child. Thankfully, I don't have a photo of it, but it was very scarily similar.
It's amazing.
But mine was for a play at school, so.
It's amazing what you can do with some tin foil.
Oh yeah.
My question was about your encounter with Patrick Moore. Do you recall what you talked about?
No, I mean, I'd always sort of very occasionally exchanged letters in the past, and he was always sent his postcard back on BBC typed postcard responses. But I confess I did do it on the back of the Herschel Museum, and the fact that he was our patron.
Yeah, sure.
But he literally just said, "Come down." I had a very good Dutch friend, Jan, with me, a very keen amateur astronomer, and we just paid him a visit, stayed for lunch, and he went to sleep, and we had a look around the observatory
Nice.
with various telescopes, I should say. There was another chap there, I can't remember his name, who did a lot for Patrick. A very keen amateur astronomer who sort of did a lot there with him, but sadly I can't remember the chap's name. He gave us a bit of a guided tour, really.
Okay, well, good for you. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that. Excellent. So we'll move on to Mike's recorded entry now. So hopefully, as it's YouTube, let's fingers crossed it'll work. Let's go. That's loud.
Hi, I'm Mike. I took up astronomy March last year in response to suddenly finding myself at home with time on my hands, which was something of a shock after the previous 40 years. Obviously in the middle of lockdown I couldn't just go out and buy a telescope, so I made this one, which is a 6-inch Newton reflector on a sort of home-brewed motorised wedge. The idea of that being was it folded flat and would go in the car, which it seems to do fairly well. Which after 9 months of development actually works quite well, but it was quite a frustrating process getting the exposure times I could do slowly up from 2 to 3 seconds to 6 seconds, and then sort of 20 plus seconds at last. That's enabled me to have a lot of fun and get some very nice pictures, and I've learnt an awful lot. From an astronomy perspective, I live at the bottom of a well with floodlights around the rim, so I was very keen to try observing in Barbados. This meant prefabricating the precision parts for a 10-inch Newton and then doing the main build on site. I'm a big fan of wood for telescope construction, as it has a very low coefficient of thermal expansion along the grain. This makes it ideal for mirror cells in particular. The parts for the secondary mirror mount are made from stainless steel and screw directly onto the back of the focuser mounting plate. I'm not sure if the construction is best described as Heath Robinson or Robinson Crusoe, but it all came together in the end, and with a little bit of luck I was able to produce some very nice pictures. I didn't realise quite how lucky I was to get these at the time, but trying to repeat them when I came back to the UK brought that home to me. This is a project I'm currently finishing off, which is a 3.5-inch refractor in a wooden casing. It's a folded refractor with a 1 metre focal length. There's a mirror at the back here on a pivot, so that the image can either be directed to this focuser here or this focuser here. The idea being that you can set your camera up, get it nicely focused on a good target, then swing around and find the object that you want to look at using the eyepiece, and then simply flip the lever and take the image, and then go back again to visual viewing. The inside of the tube is fluted to create a lightweight and stiff structure. I've also had a lot of fun helping out at the Monkton Combe School Observatory, which you can see running here. I've even managed to keep all my fingers, a little bit surprising. This is the machining of the new focus rack, which presented quite a few challenges due to its size and peculiar shape. I've got quite a few machine tools at my disposal, and if any club members would like help with spare parts or new bits for a new build telescope, I'd be very happy to help them out, just for the cost of the materials and perhaps a charitable donation, which I'd leave to your conscience. Part of the motivation for this was to try and keep my sanity under lockdown conditions. You'll have to judge how successful that was, but I think it's fair to say I'm not as crazy as this guy. Thank you and good night.
Oh, God.
So that was Mike's contribution. Apologies he can't join us. He did for the start, but he's in Barbados, and apparently data costs a lot to run his internet connection. So he did this by YouTube. So and Mike's so one of the I abuse it completely, but he's extremely good at fabricating parts and sort of helping out with builds and things like that. Or if you've broken something off your telescope, Mike's definitely someone to have a conversation with. He might be able to save you a huge amount of money rather than going back to, say, a dealer who's going to try and sell you sort of 3/4 of a telescope if you've broken one little bit. He might be the person that, and he's definitely got all the tools that will be able to help fashion replacement bits and pieces. And he's so far he's been more than helpful. He's actually taken over the repair of our lone telescopes. So if any of those get broken or have bits missing, then Mike's been really generous, given his time and some of his fettling skills and his spare bits of aluminium to repair them. So he's a great guy to know. Although yet again, for those that weren't here, he did appear for a short period topless, and he got topless again in this. So I can't guarantee that he'll be able to keep his shirt on, but fingers crossed. He's a good chap to know. Okay, we can't really ask Mike any questions, but no doubt we'll get to see him later in the new season, or maybe even over the summer. So what I suggest,
But Simon, before you do, I mean, those telescope projects were amazing. They really were. I mean,
Yeah.
that refractor with a mirror at the base, which you can flip to the visual or the imaging. I mean, that's an amazing project.
yeah, and he's just crafting them all. So
Yeah.
if we want a second 7-foot telescope, I've got a funny feeling I know the engineer that can do it for us.
Yes. Well, it's a serious point actually, because when Michael Tabb was around, who was the guy who actually made the rotary telescope, he did get a series of inquiries from people who wanted to actually, make their own or get help to make their own. And it seems to me Mike is the person who, if we can get him, obviously looking at the replica telescope, could be very helpful doing that kind of thing. Yeah, amazing.
Indeed.
Simon, I was sadly away when you had the open day for the Monson Cream telescope. I just wondered if there'd be any other opportunity to have a look.
Absolutely. The only reason why I chose that particular day is that week, Mike and I finally managed to move the telescope round and replace the pins that people had put in the wrong place and then not put all of them in the 1970s and 1980s, because that actually meant it was unsafe. So that's the week when we got it safe again. We just opened up on the Saturday, but yeah, there'll be more than a few opportunities, and the school has just opened up a funding page to try and get its alumni to contribute towards the cost of a new objective. So it's definitely going to be something that it becomes more of a focus in our observing going forward, both in terms of outreach and us going in to not only enjoy it, but to the thought of going observing and actually having somewhere where you can go and sit down and get out of the wind for 15 minutes or so, where there'll be electricity and light and perhaps conversation and witty repartee, then it'll probably be one of the focal points for what we do in the coming season as well. Yeah, so there will be more. So I'll look at the diary and put a few more in.
Right.
Okay. Richard, it's actually you're next there. Now, did you want to? Because if you want to do the slideshow yourself, if you've got the things,
Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that. Yeah.
yeah, let's do that.
Can you see the first slide?
I can see the first slide. Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
So over to you, Richard.
Right. Okay. So this isn't so much about what I've been up to recently as what I was up to a few years ago when international travel was possible, and I spent a few months working in India near Delhi, and I came across virtually by chance this quite amazing place, Jantar Mantar, and you can see from the background there that it's actually located in the heart of New Delhi. And the name Jantar Mantar means instruments for calculation or instruments for measuring the harmony of the heavens. And it was built in the 18th century by Jai Singh II, who was king under the Mughal emperors of the time. He actually built he built 5 of these observatories in various locations around India. And probably the most famous is Jaipur, which I didn't get to see, but this was, you know, I found quite amazing. And the reason it was constructed was frustration at the time with inaccuracies of the brass instruments, the astrolabes and so on at the time. And so the issue of precision was solved really by building at scale. And so you have these massive masonry objects that are used for observations. And Jantar Mantar isn't a single instrument, it's actually a complex of about 13 separate instruments. So I'll just, right. So the first instrument I'll talk about is called the Ram Yantra, and this perhaps is the easiest of the objects to understand, and it's used for measuring the altitude and the azimuth of celestial objects. So it's as you can see, it's a cylinder. There's actually a pole in the middle, and by using the rim of the cylinder, you can measure the altitude, and depending where on the rim the object falls, that gives you the azimuth. These are some pictures of the interior, and you can see that particularly on the right hand photo, there are gradations there. And the central pole was also used for sighting purposes, and there are also gradations on the ribs of the floor. The second instrument is Samrat Yantra, and this really is a huge sundial, equinoctial sundial, used for measuring solar time and the sun's declination. It also had other purposes, but it actually achieves a precision of plus or minus 2 seconds, which is pretty good for a sundial. Next instrument I'm talking about is the Jai Prakash Yantra, and you can see in the foreground of the photo part of a hollowed out hemisphere, and the instrument was actually 2 of these hemispheres, and there'd be cross wires stretched across the rims of these hemispheres, and then for bright objects like the sun, where the shadow of the wires fell on the bowl, that would allow you to measure the celestial positions. You could also use it at night by sighting through the cross wires, and the bowls were inscribed with both altazimuth and equatorial coordinates, so that enabled you very quickly to convert from one to the other. this instrument, the Mitra Yantra, I sort of see as the Swiss Army knife of the observatory, because it's actually a combination of 5 different measuring devices. You can see there measuring altitude, zodiac and solstice, local time, declination, latitude and longitude, using the different parts of the construction. And again, you know, the accuracy is, you know, pretty impressive. So the declination could be measured to a precision of a minute of arc. So I think when I saw this, it struck me there was a parallel with this quite a famous illustration of Tycho Brahe's Uraniborg and the Great Quadrant there, which again was a device where precision was achieved through the use of scale. And I thought it was interesting to draw a comparison between the two. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Richard.
Okay.
See, I should have invited Dipali Gaskell, who is a big proponent of Indian astronomy and Indian astronomical research. So I'll point her in the direction of the recording. I'm sure she'll enjoy it.
Okay, well, I thought it was interesting because I think quite very often our view of astronomy is very Eurocentric or Western based. And so, you know, I think it's very interesting to see, you know, what was achieved elsewhere.
Is it open to the public?
It is, yeah. There's a extremely small charge for admission, and it's actually, you know, Delhi is quite a crowded, bustly place. So this is actually, as well as being of astronomical interest, you know, it's quite a haven of peace, you know, to spend some time in. And you know, you see Indian families out, you know, enjoying themselves, and so it's a really nice place. But I also think, you know, the shapes of the constructions are very interesting, and actually, to my eye, very modern looking. And there's also, you know, an interesting contrast between, you know, the observatory and the modern skyscrapers, you know, the skyline behind. Yeah.
Does anybody actually use it anymore?
Not scientifically, but there was a project, I think, probably a decade or so ago, where they looked, you know, very seriously at the instruments and you know, to work out precisely how they were used and the sorts of accuracies that could be achieved. Yeah.
I see one of these things in India, and I have been to Jaipur. I didn't think it was Jaipur there. Do you recall the other cities where they have them?
Yes, so there's Jaipur is probably the most famous one, and in fact the most impressive one. I didn't get there, but there's one in New Delhi, clearly. Ujjain, Mathuri, Varanasi are the other locations.
I think I saw the one in Varanasi.
Yes, yeah.
Which is quite small, I think, by comparison.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
I mean, reading about this, as well as being, you know, of astronomical use, these objects are also, if you like, political statements to, you know, underline the power and prestige of the king. So they serve that purpose as well. So it's interesting to consider to what extent that's a factor in modern day constructions.
Like Herschel's telescopes.
Indeed, yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much for that, Richard. Very enjoyable. And once COVID's out the way, it'll add to our potential holiday destinations.
Well, absolutely. If you go to New Delhi, I recommend going there. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's keep moving on. Now, next in our list is Rob. To take us through. Now, Rob, did you want to do host your own presentation?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. If that's easier for you, then that's great.
That's the size of the file.
I should have warned you, shouldn't I?
Hang on. Let me stop the share and let me swap over to a PDF. Not liking that.
I've got your PDF just in case this doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not letting me stop the share.
You want to stop a share? I can do that for you.
Yeah, please. And then I'll shut this one down and open up the PDF.
Okay, stopped.
Right, mine's still stuck. Is everyone stuck? Have I killed everyone?
No, we're back
Oh,
into
there we go.
ordinary.
It's worked
Yeah.
again. Right, let's get rid of that. So another go. Right, PDF smaller.
Yeah, we can see it.
Aha, right, that'll do.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, I suppose really I ought to explain how I found Bath Astronomers. As you can probably hear, I come from Essex, not Bath. I've taken wildlife photos for a number of years, and I've always shared them with the guy I work with. We have a shared love of wildlife called Richard Symes, and his brother Tony Symes, who's not too far from you guys. And we got chatting one evening, and I'd just taken the first photo of Neowise, and the shot had all the different colours of the sky as it went up towards Neowise. And Tony said, well, coincidentally, there's a talk next week about why the sky has all these different colours when you take a photo. So would you like to join? And from that point forward, I was hooked. So that was perfect timing. And I discovered you through that chance thing through wildlife photography. So that worked quite well. I've always had a big interest in astronomy because my dad was a captain on a super tanker and navigated by the stars. So everyone that ever met my dad got pointed upwards, and you had to be able to find the pole star. You had to be able to follow the Big Dipper, the usual sort of things. And then everyone likes Orion and Cassiopeia because they're so easy to spot and fascinating in the night sky. And the moon as well. You know, my dad spent a lot of time showing us and talking us through the different things, Jupiter, Saturn, all the things that you can see very clearly that everyone was fascinated with. As tended to be fairly typical at my time at school, my parents had to bribe me to do well. And I was bribed with, if I passed my exams, they would get me a telescope. So, funnily enough, I concentrated very hard. He got the telescope from the guy over the road that was going to university. It was passing his over. It was an old refractor, and it was absolutely fantastic. It gave us some amazing views of the moon. It came with a sun filter, and it was all ready to go. And he went to university to study something associated with astronomy. So it was a reasonable telescope to start with. So I was extremely lucky in being able to, get a closer look. And obviously the father showing me what was what. Again, it's fairly consistent with me to try and keep me well behaved. I was a pain on Christmas Eve. I was excited as a kid, and they bought me a book called The Universe. So Christmas Eve, to shut me up, they sent me upstairs with this book and said, you can have that now, and then you can worry about Christmas tomorrow. And I remember that to this day distinctly. On the front of the book, The Universe, there was Andromeda. Open the front cover, and there was the Horsehead Nebula. The second page in was a black hole, and then the back front cover was Orion. And those sort of things have stuck with me forever. So they were my favourite targets. So at the start of lockdown, one of my wife's friends asked me to show her how to use her camera. She was trying to take photos of the swans, and I was showing her exposure compensation to work, and just generally an understanding of how a camera works. A couple of weeks later, I said to her, have you got any photos? And she sent me a photo of the moon. And I'd never thought of taking a photo of the moon with a DSLR. So I was blown away. I looked out of my lounge window, facing south. Well, we've got some large sash windows that you can drop the top or the bottom, and right in front of us was the moon. So grabbed the camera, set it up, took the first photo. Wasn't great. So the following night it was full moon, so I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning to wait for it to be the right place, and had too much wine, so the focus was off to start with. After from drinking from about 8 o'clock gently until 2 o'clock in the morning, really did affect the focus. And I've subsequently found that because of the lack of shadows and things, it was very difficult to get a good picture of the full moon. But that really sort of took off. And at the same time, then, of course, neowise popped up, and that was quite fascinating. To actually be able to go out and see that with the naked eye was incredible. As luck would have it, at the same time, Silverstone was cancelled. I'd paid for myself and my wife to go away to see the British Grand Prix, camping for the weekend, a caravan there. So that was reasonably expensive, and I got a full refund. And I said to my wife, I'm only going to spend it on something stupid, so can I spend it on a telescope? And little did she know that that started something. So I also added to my camera kit because I found that it was easier for me to practice on the camera because I knew how everything worked, and then transfer some of that knowledge over to the telescope. So that was this is the first attempt with DSLR on the moon, and the stacking to bring some of the color out on it. And that's just with a DSLR 500 lens and a 2x teleconverter. Using my Stellarium map, I found out fairly quickly that the ISS was flying over. I'd seen it a few times in the past and was fascinated how quick it moved in the sky. But then this turned out to be just over the road to me. So I set half a dozen cameras, everything up, recorded them, and managed to get this shot. So I was quite pleased with that one, watching it coming through. I then found out, and I think this was probably the most interesting thing, through the camera and zooming in using the video and live view, that you could actually see the planets. I mean, that was, to this day, seeing a live view, as much as I love astrophotography, actually watching something moving across the screen and live is just, there's something magical about that, and that really captured me. So they were the best DSLR photos with a huge amount of processing, as you can imagine, to get that. But yeah, that really did hook me. And then these are the neowise photos, and it was the photo on the right that it was Tony said, oh, we might be able to explain why you've got so many different colors in your photo. So that was great, sitting there and understanding all of the different colors and how that worked. That was fascinating. And again, every time you learn something, you want to learn more. It sort of feeds the interest. I then went out to try and track down the favourites from my Universe book. So that was my first version of Andromeda, and I bought myself a star tracker. And that was the first attempt, actually. The second, third and fourth were nowhere near as good as that. I'm generally lucky and inconsistent. So I've got some great images, and I've got 2 terabytes of stuff that maybe I'll never process properly. I then bought myself a Celestron 6SE, and I was lucky enough that obviously last year with Mars Junction, and I got some reasonable shots in the first time round. About the same time, I was taking all these from inside my living room, shining with the telescope facing through outside the window. The houses opposite, and the telescope is sort of pointing just above the bedrooms. So I thought someone somewhere is going to walk past and see me pointing the telescope to someone's bedroom and think that there's something wrong with me. So I started posting some of the pictures on our local, I live in a garrison, and in our local garrison forum, really just to try and say, if anyone's going to accuse me of anything, this is what I'm actually doing. It's even worse than you think, because I really thought I'd be the only person to look. Well, everyone got hooked instantly. The garrison forum is generally a buy and sell type thing. We can't be bothered to take something to the tip. Would anyone like to, have this for free? So got quite a following, and there was a number of other people that reared their heads and said they've got telescopes. So we've been swapping equipment and cameras ever since to try different things. So that's worked well. That's the best picture of Jupiter to date. with an awful lot of processing. It does help that, you know, being a photographer to start with, I understand the processing, you know, and the using the various different techniques to get the detail out. So it does take an awful long time for me to get that, the quality of the images that are coming out of the telescope. As surprising it ends up at that. It still surprises me when I can get a decent photo out of it from the starting point. I was then quite lucky. I was talking to a guy online called Ron Breacher, and he's a PixInsight trainer, and I wanted to learn how to process astrophotos properly before I took too many more poor images to understand how to do it properly. So I had a chat with him. He said, you've got two things. You can buy a data set, or I'll show you how my telescope works and you can program it. What he meant is he'll tell me how to program it and charge me for the privilege. But I get to keep the data. So of course, Andromeda was the first one. 2 weeks later, I got an email saying there's about 4 gigabytes of data in a folder for you. And I booked 10 hours worth of online PixInsight training. And that was definitely worth it because it taught me how to process things properly. But because you're breaking things down and you're processing a star differently to the hydrogen alpha, it gave me that fast track knowledge into how things were put together. So again, every time I was doing something, you had to learn about the object. Otherwise, you couldn't get a decent picture. So here's my version of Andromeda. That's the best I've managed to get so far. So I was quite pleased with that. And I was working my way through my book that I had from childhood. I spent most of the winter taking photos of Orion. My plan was to have a full constellation by the end of the winter. I overestimated my ability by miles. And so I managed to get the belt, and I've got various different degrees of quality pictures around that. So I reckon I need another winter at least before I get the full constellation. So that turned out quite well. I had a few accidents which turned out to be quite good. I borrowed a hydrogen alpha filter from the guy over the road, and I took that and run that through StarNet to try and overlay that. And I thought that came out with quite an interesting picture, completely by accident. I've never managed to overlay it onto the RGB picture yet, but one day maybe I'll work out how to do that, so it doesn't look like I've covered it in crayon. But I quite like that. I think that's quite very interesting. It really shows you what's going on without the stars to detract from. And then my new best friend is my little solar telescope and solar filter. So I've got a Coronado PST, which I sat outside watching the eclipse with your glasses. So thank you very much for sending me those glasses. I sat outside the front and everyone stopped to find out what was going on because they'd been watching my photos that I've been taking and posted over the months. And I tend to put an explanation of what I've found out while I'm processing them as well. So there was a lot of people headed towards there, and we were passing around the glasses and people got to see it live. It was incredible. It was, I reckon, 60 people. It's on the way to the shops as well. It's not that I'm that popular. It's the only Sainsbury's in Miles, so they'll walk there. But yeah, so we managed to get some photos. This was before the eclipse. I managed to catch. This is from where I live as well. Managed to catch the ISS going across the sun. The eclipse we had the other day. And then I've just been trying other things really because people are interested. I wanted to keep their interest up. They keep me interested as well. So this was the moon doing a Ninja Turtle type appearance over the. We have a submarine boom at the entrance to the Thames where I live, and that's the submarine boom going right out halfway across the Thames. They used to put a net across to Sheerness to stop the German submarines coming up the Thames. So that's that over the top. That's me and my friend trying to be a bit arty in front of the Milky Way. That took forever because we couldn't stay still for 30 seconds. I didn't realise how difficult it was when it's actually quite dark to stand still. So there was lots of us blurred and fiddling. And then just a few of the others. So this is Mars coming across towards the Pleiades. And again, this was one I did live when it was coming. I went onto Facebook and said, look, I'm outside in the we don't have gardens in the garrison. We have a central areas that we can all share. So I had that set up, and on the back of the camera, people could see the photos that were being taken. So they got to see it live, as well as got to see the stats output. So that's sort of what I've been doing so far.
That's amazing, Rob.
They're stunning.
Thank you.
How long have you been at it now, Rob, in total?
March, April. Well, the second lockdown. I suppose it was 2 weeks into lockdown that I took the first moon photo. But I've worked from home ever since, and I have spent an inordinate amount of time and money. I did a brilliant maths calculation where I worked out that I was saving £400 a month through not travelling. I got £4,000 back from the Silverstone, so I worked out that should give me a good base to get everything I'd likely to need. And obviously not travelling, I figured how much money I'd save each month. So as long as I don't have to go back to London for the next 7 years, I reckon I'll about break even.
I like your maths.
It works eventually, it'll catch up with me. But I find it absolutely fascinating. It's the more you do it, the more you learn. And I mean, I'm surprised how many people locally are equally interested and have all come out of the woodwork. Well, there's regularly 50 or 60 people commenting. The majority of them women, and the majority of them elder women that wanted to do something with themselves and couldn't because of their age. So, and a lot of these people are quite, you clearly know they've got a good history of physics or maths or something like that. And they're asking all the questions. The blokes generally say nice picture because they don't want to look stupid. But the women are the ones that are definitely much more interested and have a good knowledge to start with and want to know what's going on rather than just nice picture. So it's quite fascinating to know how many people are actually interested in it.
That's really good.
Rob, can I ask you the first pictures of the planets you showed us? What equipment did you use beyond your DSLR?
I had a 500 prime lens and a 2x teleconverter. So, and I was lucky. I mean, it was one of those clear nights to start with. That's it. I've got several terabytes of data that I haven't used. But yeah, that's 500 with a 2x teleconverter on a full frame camera.
Rob, are you selling any of them?
No. It's funny that there's a lot of people that have got pictures of mine up now. So some of the wildlife, some of the I do some of the garrison because it's an old army place. There's quite some attractive buildings and churches, and I take a picture of that, and then I have to go in front of the lights and then take a picture of the sky behind, and merge the two and point out this is what you can actually see. So if you look up, that light actually means this. There's a lot of people that have had those off me, but I give them away because I enjoy taking the photos and talking about them. I've got no desire to sell anything. I just enjoy taking them and the interest.
That last image of Mars and the Pleiades is just blew me away. It's really incredible.
Oh, really? Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Just to think that you can actually step outside and see all of this is, I don't think that's ever going to get boring.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's either that or stay in and watch Love Island. So I know which I'd prefer to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
job done, isn't it?
In the interest of time, thanks very much, Rob. That was absolutely great. I've learned loads. I know who I'm going to come to talk to. I'm going to hand over to our other astrophotographer. He's about a year ahead of you in terms of journey. So over to you, Roger. If you wouldn't mind sharing and taking us through your little piece, that would be absolutely smashing. Thank you.
Okay. Right, well, I'm just going to be sharing some pictures that I've taken this year, although there is only a small selection of the hundreds and hundreds that I've actually got. Just a highlight of some of the images that I've taken during 2021. And if anyone wants to ask any questions about the images, then please feel free to do so. Okay, so obviously you've just seen a picture of the Pleiades. Here's one that I've done. This is only just done with a 71mm refractor, although it was done with an astro camera over 3 hours of exposures and then blended together with a proper program. So that turned out quite well, I thought. Okay. This one is the Bode's Nebula, Bode's Galaxy M81. And if I move over to the following one, there's a better view of it with the Cigar Galaxy M82. That was also done with the same telescope. So just a small telescope gives a reasonable field of view with what you can see here. It's just a matter of getting it all processed up together. And obviously, Rob will probably find that of interest on how that would be put together. I don't use PixInsight, I just use AstroPixel Processor, which seems to work quite well, and then finish it off in Photoshop. And that was probably just a couple of hours of exposures done in my back garden. All these pictures were done from my back garden, which is a Bortle 2 down at Sparkford. Here we have the M51 Whirlpool, which I've been taking since I've started. I'm gradually getting to refine my techniques of how I take them and process them. So I'm gradually, like Rob, learning from trial and error, lots of errors and so plenty of trials. But once you start to get your finger on the pulse, then the rewards do sort of speak for themselves. You may notice that there's a little elliptical galaxy up in the corner here where my cursor is. So you usually find you photograph one object and you find you've got about 300 more in the picture. I've started redoing the Ring Nebula again, as it's now coming up to see, and I've managed to process it so you can see more of the color in the ring and can just about see the central star there. I'm just wondering how it's going to finish off, but also I've got this little barred spiral galaxy in the background, which I hadn't really noticed before. So that was that was a bonus. This is one that Sandy Whitten and I went down to Branscombe down in Devon a couple of months back with another colleague, and I reckon it was about a Bortle scale 2 down there on the south coast there, and while we were waiting, we saw absolutely amazing sky down there. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen such a clear sky as Sandy and I had witnessed down there. And in fact, there were so many stars down there, it was hardly a job to make out all the constellations with all the stars up in the sky. But obviously, we had a pretty good time down there, and as you can see out on the horizon, there wasn't too much light pollution. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, over you've got like the different nebulas down here, and you've got the Rho Ophiuchi down over this way, where you've got the color of the nebulas and stuff. So it's that was just using a little mirrorless camera and a 12mm manual focus Samyang lens. And it was just a matter of using a series of stat pictures to put together to bring the details out. So I was quite pleased about that.
The reflections are really interesting, aren't they, in this picture?
Yeah, it was fairly smooth sea out there. So it wasn't too bad. I might have enhanced it a little bit, but obviously it did happen.
What sort of exposure time did you use?
Well, obviously you've got what they call the 500 rule, or that would be the 300 rule with the mirrorless camera, because of the 1.5 times crop factor. But I was only doing about between 15 and 20 seconds exposures on this, and at about 1600 ISO. So you just continually taking pictures, and obviously it will move around. So you obviously need to use a static foreground to put the picture in, otherwise you'll get a blurred foreground. So it's just a matter of putting a picture down like the sea in front to stop it getting all blurry, because you've got the tilt of the Milky Way going over, you'll gradually get the sea moving, tilting about a bit. But you can use various programs depending on whether you're an Apple or a PC to stack them and get really good results. This is another one that Sandy and I went out to on the last large moon, not super moon. I'm not allowed to say super moon. And we managed to get into a field about 700 yards away. Was it, Sandy, to get this? I was using my 71mm refractor because I didn't have a long telephoto lens. So Sandy was using a big telephoto lens on his camera, and I was using my 71mm refractor, which was roughly the similar focal length to what he was using. But we were using an app on our phones called Photo Pills to work out the location of the moonrise to coincide with the Stonehenge stones. And unfortunately, it didn't turn out as good as we hoped. It was rather cloudy. So what I've actually got here, because the moon had come through the clouds, I managed to get the whole disk of the moon. So one of the frame where I've actually got this was the bottom part of the moon, and then from the other selections of the 200 pictures or so that I'd taken, the slivers of the moon that I managed to get of the whole of the globe, I've stitched in. So it's basically like a Victoria sponge layer of moon slices. But obviously with the atmospheric distortion of the moon, it sort of looks quite almost realistic. But that's how it probably would have looked if it had cleared at that one point. But I managed to get the result that I wanted to, although it wasn't the weather that we were hoping for. Plus the fact that we were in alignment of some rather horrible power lines and power cables strutting across the picture, so I just got rid of them. Unfortunately, there were no security guards on that picture either, so that's quite an interesting composite picture. But obviously we want to try and do it again properly in one fell swoop, so to speak. But it was a good project, and came out quite well, I thought. This was taken just a few weeks back, now that Cygnus and the Milky Way are rising up a lot higher. Just a quick process of the North American Nebula. And that was just done with a mirrorless camera and a 70 to 200mm equivalent lens at the 200 equivalent focal length. And that was a series of stat pictures, but I did put it on my German equatorial mount. It did look a bit OTT, but it had to be done. So I just left it running for the amount of 2 or 3 hours, although it wasn't any proper astronomical darkness at the time that I was doing this, but I managed to get what I could, and that's the results that I got from it. And then it just leaves up to the image that I got of the moon, which was taken this morning. Now, this was done with a planetary camera, which I bought for my opposition of Mars last year. And I've put a infrared cut filter on there, which enables the blue sky to go almost black, like you see here. I've just darkened it down a little bit more, just to emphasize the sphere of the moon. and it seems to come out quite well. So this was done using with a video, and then out of about the 2,000 or so frames that I got, and composed it and stacked it, and then processed it in Photoshop to bring out all the details of the surface of what was visible at that time. And that's what I got for you this evening.
Well, thank you, Roger. Have we got some questions for Roger?
Roger, where was you standing when you took the Stonehenge photo?
Well, if you were looking at Stonehenge from the 303, we were in a field to the right. So you were looking eastwards for the moonrise to come up. We were about 700 yards or so up a field. We can go through it, Sandy and I, on how to use photo pills to get the exact locations of where we were to be when the moon did come up. And on that evening, there were half a dozen of us with our telephoto lenses and cameras and tripods all lined up like the paparazzi waiting for the moon to come up. Obviously, because it was reasonably level, we could go left or right to finally tune the position of the rising moon, which never really happened.
Rob, you can get access to Stonehenge pretty much 24 hours, but they do have a fence round actually Stonehenge itself. But the rest of the land is pretty much a public highway. There's a bridle path that you'll see everybody camping on and staying on at night. You're allowed to stay for 3 nights. That's a law that's been in place for about 250 years, when the horses and the carriages used to travel from London to Cornwall. And that was their stop-off point, was on the bridleway, and it's still enforced to this day. So you can actually stay there overnight, right outside the stones. Obviously, you can't go over the fence. And the fields surrounding Stonehenge are public rights of way as well. So although it's owned by English Heritage, they obviously own where the stones are and the approach road to it. But the rest of the land you pretty much walk round. So you can pretty much go in for free, and you can go in 24/7, as long as you don't go over the fence to the stones, because that's 24-hour security on it. But it's pretty easy to get to.
Yeah, well, the reason I asked, I was travelling back a couple of weeks, well, 3 or 4 weeks ago now, from Devon, spending, wildlife photography, and I timed it so I saw the sun come up, and I managed to get a photo of the sun coming up. But it was a bit of a mad rush because it was a last-minute thing. I had to get up early and do 2.5 hours to get there from Devon. And I found myself standing in the wrong place. So I was charging around with all the equipment.
As you do.
And then I thought, and I was thinking, okay, where else am I going to go? Because I was a bit too far away. It was great for a sunrise because there's so much else going on, but not necessarily for that. So, right, I'll have a proper look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the picture I've got behind me is another project that Sandy and I did for getting to the right location. We were there the day before, which was also clear, but obviously the moon was rising about an hour and a half earlier, so obviously it was much lighter. But we planned it for the night that you got the picture in the background, and it turned out perfect, didn't it, Sandy?
Yeah, it's fine.
And there were about 30 of us there. There was quite sort of spread down a half a mile of a lane down near Glastonbury, photographing the moonrise, and then there were some power gliders flying about and all sorts of things. But
yeah, I saw that all over the internet. I didn't realise that was you.
It was absolutely amazing.
Roger, I've got the mirrorless camera, and probably got the lenses as well and the drives. But so do you take video? Do you take? Oh, nice. Is yours a Canon or a Nikon?
It's a Fuji X Pro 2.
Very nice.
And it's the 50 to 140, which is equivalent to a 70 to 200 full frame. And I did have a full frame Nikon equipment, but it was so heavy I chucked it all in, and I bought this at the photography show. I spent an absolute fortune on it, but had to be done.
So, ignorant question: do you take video clips that you stack, or do you take stills?
For my lunar work, I do video,
Hmm.
and I do it with my little planetary camera, which does about 60 frames a second, and then it's just compiled into a program called AutoStackert, which is on the PC, and then it saves the processed image as a TIFF, and then you just process it as you normally would an ordinary still picture.
Okay, and what about the constellations and the deep sky and the Milky Way and stuff like that?
Well, I've got a larger size astro camera, which isn't called, which I now need to get, and I use astro pixel processor to process hundreds of pictures from that.
Okay,
Just depends.
okay, thanks.
That's okay.
Thanks for that, Roger.
It's all right.
Should we move on to Sandy now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Can you see that, everybody?
We can, yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Evening all. Just to introduce myself, Sandy Whitson. I've been a member of Bath Astronomers for the last couple of years. Also a member of Beckington Astronomy Society, of which I am secretary as well, although to be honest, we haven't really done very much over the last 12 months. And we're probably just linked into Simon's meetings for Bath, so thank you very much for that, Simon. I'm probably a late arrival to astronomy. I probably really didn't start getting my head around it until about 2015, 2016, when I was kind of semi-retired and had some time in my hands and really wanted to understand what was up there. I could see the moon, I could see the sun, and to be honest, probably that was about it. To be honest, my knowledge was absolutely zilch. So I got myself a little 5-inch SCT telescope, which a little Celestron 1, which I really enjoyed using, and a little pair of binoculars, 10x50, Orion's 10x50s, which to this day I still use constantly and quite a bit. Got to chat to Charles and Maggie, who used to obviously have the telescopic shop in Frome, and they used to do some introductory evenings to astronomy, which really started to get me into it. Got to know a couple of the guys in the Wiltshire Society, Jonathan Gale, etc. We used to have the Mad Viewers meeting in the Red Line pub at Stourhead, and then we used to go up to the top of Stourhead and at White Sheet Hill, and some cracking skies up there, a nice clear evening. So that's what kind of got me hooked in kind of 16, 17. And then what I could view through my telescope, I actually wanted to try and take some pictures. And the next problem for me was that I knew absolutely nothing about photography, absolutely zilch. Apart from putting a camera in automatic, that was probably my limit. So I started to try and teach myself how to take pictures by trial and error. So really the next few minutes is just a basic introduction of kind of my experiences and some pictures. So obviously it can be extremely rewarding. Can also be as simple as a camera just mounted with a tripod, and obviously we've heard this from Rob and Roger before, but it's complicated and as much money as you want to spend on liquid-cooled CCDs or robotically controlled telescopes or whatever you want. So I'm just keeping it very, very simple. This is my go-to setup, to be honest. Ordinary Canon 6D Mark II, nice big chunky ball head. I do use the.
Are you got on presentation mode? Sorry, Sandy.
Is it not showing?
We're just on the opening frame, so
Hang on. Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
It says I am screen sharing.
Yeah, so we're seeing your presentation in sort of the author sort of thing, but not the presentation mode. So we're currently just seeing your opening slide.
Oh, okay. Still not showing, no?
No, we've just got the opening slide at the moment.
Let's go back. What are you seeing now, Simon? It's not.
So we've got the general forum again now. So if you do another screen share, maybe it'll. So if you screen share the actual presentation, or
yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah,
and then go into presentation mode, it should flip, hopefully.
So what are you seeing now, Simon?
So we're just seeing your normal sort of the editing page.
I think if you click on from beginning, it will start.
Yeah, that's where I went from beginning. Yeah.
So we're still seeing that, the editing page.
Does it come up now, Simon? No?
Nope. Tell you what, I actually got your slides. So do you want me? Shall I just?
Yeah, I don't
I'll
know.
drive.
Yeah.
I'll drive, and then you can carry on. So if I just do that, Bing. Okay. So there you go. That's where you were, was it?
Yeah, that's where I was. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Get my head around that later. Anyway,
just do a Chris Whitty when you want another
slide. This is my kind of go-to setup. Keep it very simple. Nice chunky ball head. 6D, as you can see, and the intervalometer uses the Pluto trigger. I've tried various intervalometers over the last 2 or 3 years, but I just find the Pluto really, really easy to use. Use it straight from the phone. It takes seconds to set up whatever you want to take, or number of images you want to take, rather than trying to fumble about with an intervalometer in the dark just mounted on a standard tripod. So that's pretty much my standard setup, using a 24 Samyang 24 prime lens, or a 14mm prime lens, or the 135 prime lens. Any 3 of these lenses I find just has some excellent images. Next one, please, Sam. So it's difficult to precisely focus a star field through a DSLR viewfinder by eye alone, and obviously manufacturers do skimp on the costs of that, and autofocus won't work, so you usually have to manually focus your camera lens in a star. Next slide, please. When you manually focus, losing live view, you just try and aim for a star and make that as small as possible, and just keep focusing until you get that really, really small point. And magnifying 10 times obviously helps as well. But that's been quite a steep learning curve for me over the last 2 or 3 years to try and understand that and get my head around it. So you can use DSLR, point and shoot camera. You can use your iPhone. I do use a tracker sometimes, the Star Adventurer. And obviously the app to use is Stellarium and Photopills. Nice sturdy ball head, generally about 44mm I find is good, gives you a bit of strength. Understanding manual mode now, obviously my knowledge of using a camera was pretty zilch, so I had a very, very steep learning curve over the last 2 or 3 years to get my head around how to use manual. Use of live view in the dark. Sounds easy and simple enough, but it's pitch black and you can't see your hand in front of you and you're trying to work your way around the camera. I used to sit in the conservatory at night in the dark. Used to sit in the conservatory at night in the dark and listen and try and work out how to get round the different options on the camera. I think the wife thought I was going bonkers. Use of cable release, as I say, I use an intervalometer. Turning off noise reduction. You don't want your noise reduction on, that will just cause you problems. Focusing in the dark. Yeah, not easy, but after you've done it a few times, you get your head around it. And lenses, 14, 24, 50. Also use a 200mm lens and a 150 to 600 for the moon, as Rob's already explained. Aperture, f2.8 is ideal, and ISO generally 800 to 3200. Exposure depends on the weather and whatever I'm photographing, but it can be anything from just a few seconds to 30, 40 seconds. And for processing, I generally use Lightroom or Photoshop, etc., and shoot everything in RAW. Next one, Simon, please. Again, nobody really understands sensor sizes. That's a 35mm, and as Roger was saying, he used, I think, the 4/3 system. So you can see the difference in sizes between using a full frame and the APS-C size camera against the 4/3. So I generally stick to full frame. I've got an APS-C camera sometimes used, but generally I will stick to the full frame. It just gives you a nice, nice wider shot. Next one, please. Again, we're talking about times and exposure, and I think some do it slightly differently, but there is a common rule, which is the 500 rule, as Roger was explaining earlier. And generally, I was using like a 14mm lens and a full frame camera. I could quite easily push that to 30 seconds. I have pushed it to 15, 60 seconds on a 14mm, and you can, apart from the edges, you can just about get away with it if you've got a good dark sky. Obviously, if you're using a 200mm lens or a 600mm lens, you'll get 1, 2 or 3 seconds if you're lucky before you get lots and lots of star trailing. Next one, please, Simon. I started off just doing some kind of basic stuff. I quite enjoyed doing the old star trails. That's the Dovecot down at Britain. It's probably about 500 images, and then just stack them in Deep Sky Stacker. Quite easy to do. Just take 15 or 20 seconds, and then stick it all in together and star stacks, etc. And you get a nice picture coming out. So quite enjoy doing them. Next one, please. This is one of my first images of the Milky Way. This is from Stourhead when I was with the Mad Viewers one night, and I was just had my camera, and I really didn't know what I was doing. This was probably like 16, 17, and I was just taking pictures of the night sky, and I brought all these images back home, hundreds of them, to try and work through. But that was probably one of the first images I thought, oh, actually, I'm maybe onto something here. I didn't really know what the Milky Way was at that time, but another steep learning curve. Next one, please. Yeah, this is from the same evening. Again, the one in the left, 25 seconds at f2.8. I thought, oh, that's a really good. I thought it was a cracking image. I was really chuffed with it, and then I tried to process it, and I kind of got that. But you can see the composition is shocking. It's not terribly good. There's lots of noise in it, but that was some of the first images I took of the Milky Way. Next one, please, Sam. This is down at Branscombe with Roger, as he's shown you earlier a few weeks ago. The light you can see in the distance is the coast of France. Absolutely fantastic sky that night with a bit of the beach, but fantastic it was. Probably one of the best skies I've seen in a long time. Next one, please. Glastonbury tour by night. And you probably noticed something a bit odd about this picture. I just put it in just as a bit of a reference point, because you see lots of images online. You think, oh, that's an absolutely cracking image, and how did they manage to take that, and how did they manage to get the Milky Way, the moon, the sun, whatever it was in that position. But this is just a composite. So Glastonbury tour, and I just took an image of night sky, just a random night sky, and slipped it into the background. So there's lots of images you'll see online. You think, oh, brilliant, but are they actually real? And sometimes you can tell by looking at them with the position of planets and where the Milky Way is sitting and what time of year it is, you know, if it's an actual real picture or not. But I thought it actually can make it look quite effective. Actually, if I put that online, then probably nobody would know any different, but it is a composite. Next one, please. This is what Roger and I were talking about earlier. Obviously, trying to get the moon in exactly the precise position behind Glastonbury tour. Took a bit of planning. Took 2 or 3 recce's for Roger and I to go down the previous week and try and work out exactly. We did do a dummy run on a Sunday evening, and probably just as well, to be honest, because I thought it was quite good at using photopills. By calculations, for a Sunday evening when we did the trial run, the Milky Way, the moon was an absolute mile away from where I expected it to be. So I went back home for the Monday during the day, and went through photopills and tried to work out what I'd done wrong, etc., etc. And that was the result. On the Monday evening, went back down and we were exactly the right position to get the moon sitting exactly where we wanted it. So took a bit of planning, a bit of doing, but nice to get it. Next one, please. My go-to ones to use is Lightroom, which I've been trying to teach myself over the last couple of years. I use Deep Stacker, probably not as much recently. I've started to use Sequator quite a bit for some of the Milky Way images. You know, maybe take 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds and then just stack them in Sequator, gives you quite a nice finish. And then just finish it off in Photoshop. I guess if Simon's got any nights or evenings in the coming weeks or months, hopefully if anybody wants to help or an introduction to taking some night sky images just with a basic camera and DSLR, then by all means let Simon know and I'll be happy to help out. Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
That might be quite popular. It's a very kind offer.
Where do you live, Sandy?
Sorry?
Where do you live?
Frome.
Okay. Next
So
time I'm coming through, I'll bring this stuff down.
Not far away. You'll be more than welcome. Stour Head's my local haunt.
Yeah. Can I ask your photo of the moon against Glastonbury Abbey, Glastonbury Tor? How accurate do you reckon you have to be with your positioning, for, you know, for the photo to work?
Ideally, you want to try and get within 5 or 10 yards. Ideally. I guess if you've got the option, if you've got a nice field or you've got an open space where you can go 50 yards one way and 50 yards other, and you've got a good view of the moon coming up behind your subject, then that'd be great. But we really didn't have any time because the moon rises so quickly. We probably had about 10 minutes maximum to make sure we were in the right position. Unfortunately, we were, but to be honest, Richard, I spent all day Monday planning it to make sure I was in the
There
right
was a lot
position.
of sweating going on.
There was a lot, and I was out with the binoculars, so I was just looking for the moon. I just wanted the edge of the moon and the side of the Tor coming up. And if I knew I was on the right side, then I knew I was in the right position. But yeah, but
did you have any competition?
There was quite a few of us there. I mean, from our location, you could see the moon almost rolling up the side of the Tor.
Yeah,
so we knew we were going to be pretty close to spot on.
With and I guess photopills is a totally different subject, and we could talk all night about photopills. But with photopills, obviously, if you get your location right with the red pin, if you've used it, there's also a black pin you can use, which you put in the subject, and then you can work out the height, and you can work out the angle, and you can work out the distance. You don't have to do any mathematical calculations, because photopills will work it all out for you. All you need to do is read the information it gives you. So if you've got the moon positive in degrees above your subject, and you know if it's plus half a degree or plus a degree, if it's minus, then you know you're not in the right position. So you can do it all in photopills, and once you get your head around it, it's pretty straightforward to work out.
Thank you for that. That was great, Tony. If we move on now to our final presentation by Tony, if you'd like to take control.
Yeah. Hi, evening all. Let me just. So I'm gonna. Can you see that?
My astronomy journey.
Yeah. So slightly different to the advertised billing. So I thought I'd give you a quick overview on what interested me in astronomy and basically where my journey through my hobby. So started off when I was a kid, child. Didn't really do much astronomy, but I did quite a lot of reading. Got quite a lot of books, things like planets and things around the space shuttle. Got a lot of my geek on from just Star Trek, to be honest. That really sort of piqued my interest in space, and ended up sort of doing a degree in aeronautical engineering, and actually did some research on single stage to orbit space planes. So Skylon here, which is more the engine rather than the actual plane itself. That's the valuable bit. But that was more, you know, early childhood was more around actually reading stuff, watching TV on the screen, and effectively turned 30 and decided, tell you what, I'd like to look up into the stars. So my wife got me this Skywatcher 200. It was on an equatorial mount, not motorized, just, you know, fairly, you know, just as it came really. And then got a couple of books, Turn Left at Orion and Astrophotography for the Amateur. So started reading, tried to figure out what I was doing, and had DSLR already, so I thought, you know, stick the two together, see what actually happens. And let's just say my first attempts were less than fantastic. So you know, quite a lot of star trailing around the side. It wasn't motorized at this point, so so I was trying to take photos and see what came out, and yeah, it wasn't particularly fantastic. So I decided to take pictures of the moon instead, and play around with it. So I think this was my first attempt at the moon. Not a huge amount of processing, although I did put it into some photo editing and manually try to align the two images to come up with one, and sort of successful. Slightly different contrast really, and didn't quite get the alignment particularly right, but as a first attempt I thought, yeah, it's not too bad. I then you know, practiced a little bit more, got a few more images, got a white solar filter, and took some images of the sun, got some nice sunspots and some good detail around there. And again, the moon, no, I can't remember if I put a filter on this or not. If it was just a UV filter. So yeah, so just started dabbling with that, and then realized actually there's only so much of the moon and the sun you can take a photo of. So decided to do some upgrades, installed some stepper motors on the equatorial mount. I then started dabbling with using Linkios for sort of planetary sort of photos, and then had an old laptop off work, so put Ubuntu on it and started run Deep Sky Stacker using Wine to run that piece of software. So then started looking at, you know, a bit more of the sun. Orion's been a favourite of mine, or Orion's Nebula has been a favourite of mine to have a look at. So that was one of my early attempts. Quite heavily processed. You can see quite a lot of the colours are pushed to their limits effectively. So I was relatively pleased at the time. I think the challenge I always had was trying to get, it was a fairly sort of rudimentary system with the tracker, not the tracker, the mount, and just having a stepper motor. So you need to make sure you've got accurate polar alignment, and the mount is flat on the surface, and to make sure that you can get decent length exposures. Also, you know, probably my first and best attempt at Jupiter. All subsequent attempts were not as successful. So I was quite pleased with that. I used Linkios to stack, I can't remember, 30, 40 images of Jupiter, and got quite a few of the planets as well. I struggled with exposure on this one to get the planets coming up without overexposing Jupiter. So I think what I literally did is zoomed in as close as you could using Lightroom, I think it was, and just increasing the exposure just purely around those points, just to bring out the planets a little bit. So I thought it was quite good. Although in Linkios you can see there's a slight halo around Jupiter, where I've probably over processed that a little bit. So anyway, started practicing, and then, you know, got some, you know, better image of Orion's Nebula, and then I believe that's the Hercules cluster. So started to, you know, looked at that, and, you know, I was quite impressed with the amount of colours I found from that. And bear in mind, this is still using my Nikon D7100, so it's a not full frame. So sort of debating whether to buy proper astro cameras. I need to try and justify that with the purse holder sometimes. So then more recently, so as I was using Deep Sky Stacker, more recently I decided to invest in Astro Pixel processor. So I use a Mac at home, so so interested, looking at how I can process better. So these are some of the more recent images. So this is NeoWise last year. So I thought this was actually just using my my telephoto lens on the camera rather than through the telescope. I think that was just a sequence of 10-second exposures, I believe, off from memory. And then this is a flame nebula. The big issue I had with this actually is I might have taken about 50 exposures, but maybe about 90% of them I really struggled with star trailing. Now, whether that was the mirror causing shake or the mount not being perfectly level, so it's losing its polar alignment, or maybe the stepper motors weren't quite tight enough, so it would almost like start juddering a little bit. So that's why I think that's probably a reason why I didn't get very many useful frames to then stack. So that's one of the things I'm struggling with sometimes is the actual initial setup and alignment. And then what's the next one? A couple of attempts at Moon and Andromeda with the 200, the Skywatcher. Obviously, it focuses in or zooms in far too close. So actually, Andromeda is probably a lot bigger here. So this is only a small proportion. So I think next time, I think what I'll do is I'll just stick my DSLR with the telephoto lens on. It'll be a smaller frame, but I'll get the whole of Jupiter in. Not Jupiter, Andromeda in. One thing I did want to share is actually the difference between Deep Sky Stacker and Astro Pixel processor. So what I did is I took all the this image here of Orion. I took all the base images, the raw files that I had, all the flat dark slides images that I used to create this one, but put it through Astro Pixel processor, and that's the difference I got from the two bits of software. These are the same data sets, but it's Astro Pixel processor seems to have pulled out a lot more depth, a lot more of the clouds, just a lot more detail, especially around the slightly dimmer areas. I then use Lightroom to do some of the post-processing, but I thought that was quite interesting how the different software that I've used has actually created quite a nice image, I think. And then sort of issues I think spoke about the issue I've got with alignment and just consistency really, and then the other thing is just time, actually finding the time to go out with the telescope. I'm normally in bed by 10:30 these days, so and kids keep me busy and other bits and pieces, so trying to find time to go out is a big problem, shall we say. And then for me it's actually trying to get some consistency in my image, so when I do go out I know I'm going to get quality data set to use, rather than at the moment as you go out and you go, it might be 50-50, might get some good data, might get some bad data, and then at some point when I've got that cracked is maybe try and use it for some scientific use. So I don't use some spectroscopy or planet hunting or something like that. I don't know. Quite like the scientific side of things, but it's that I can imagine that's going to be a long way away. So that's it from me. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Tony. That's absolutely great. I love seeing all your images, and you've come a long way, and it's really quite hard balancing all the different things you're doing. And one day you'll have the benefit of retirement, And I've noticed a lot of people's imaging has significantly improved after they've retired, and it's just purely time
Yeah.
to actually find those times, because we don't get perfect seeing every day. The clouds are definitely over us most of the time, and getting good data. But also you saw that you demonstrated the different way the software can have an effect, which is quite an impressive difference you've got there from exactly the same data.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Any questions or sort of points? Anything that people wanted to say about Tony's? I thought you were very brave, by the way, keeping your telescope in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think that was the initial sort of setup, and then I think I hid it away once the kids came along. So
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's we've had 8 speakers. Thank you for all of that. It was really good. And we actually organised that because we did a feedback sort of poll. Or where was it? February, March, and the one of the big things was we wanted to have a members' evening. We'd had one the previous year, but we hadn't actually got one in the rota for this year, so we've managed to get it in. And I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did. And I hope it's given you a few clues and also faces and people to talk to about maybe if you want to do some binocular astronomy and you want to do it in a relaxing way, then all the stuff that Charles has got. And if you want to get more into your imaging, then you've got quite a few members who are really going out there striving to sort of capture what is just open to your eyes. And as Charles puts, you just need a big daub to look through, and you get to see the beauty of things like the Veil Nebula, but also to capture it in camera with a camera is an interest for a lot of people. So that brings us to the end. We effectively have closed our season. We will not have a talk or gathering in July or August, but there'll be stuff going on. So there'll still be emails whizzing around, and we'll still be producing our newsletter for you. And hopefully, if I can click on that. Yep. So we're going to see you in September. We've got, that's the 29th of September, and we've got Pete Richardson, who's coming to talk to us about building a 10-inch telescope. He came to us a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago, when he was just grinding the mirrors for a telescope he was planning to build. That telescope is finished, and he's going to bring it along. Now, he is a senior test engineer at Airbus, so he's really into precision, and he's taken wood to new heights, as it were. So I think you'll find that's really enjoyable. But so there's going to be other things going on. We'll still be doing observing, and we'll have outreach sessions in terms of there's a fair at Wellow, and there's another one at Bath Hampton. So those are the beginning of September. So we'll be getting out there. We'll be promoting the society, promoting astronomy, and hopefully getting more and more people involved, enjoying things. So yeah, that's our conclusion for this evening. If anyone's got any further questions or wanted to chat, we're still here. I'll stay online. But thank you very much for what's been a very rewarding year. We started with maybe 30 odd members. We've got 55. And as we move back to having meetings based in the museum, which the first one will be in September, but we'll probably have a live feed as well. So if you don't feel comfortable about coming to the museum, you'll still be able to participate in that. So we'll probably have a half and half kind of thing going on for a while. Just so that people can feel as comfortable as they need. Okay. What have we got in the chat? Oh, thanks. Yep. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Thank you for all the time that people put in to do the presentations. It's much appreciated. And I liked sort of the journeys, some of the first shots that people taken and some of the more recent ones. To actually see how things have moved on, how you've changed your kit and how you've changed what you're up to. But fundamentally, the passion and the interest is still there. So keep doing it. And if you're unlucky, I'll ask you again next year. But hopefully we'll do a few more, and probably I'll have to do one next in the next members one as well. Okay.
Cheers, Simon. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Simon, thank
That's
you.
all right.
Thank you.
So good night, everyone. If you wanted to hang on for a chat, feel free. But enjoy your summer, and we'll see you in September.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Cheers. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Thanks, Simon.
Cheers.
Cheers then.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.